was a prophet, one man up a prophet. Reservoir was his office. He picked up rubbish in the gutter, never uttered a word of complaint. Always smiling at strangers, wistful to the danger, offering my cigarettes and offering with coffee to Oxycontin, doctor shop and tattooed toothless ladies. Tattooed toothless ladies. Mahmoud could have been a machine if he hadn't been cracked in a crash in the Emirates when he was 13. Now he's 37 and he's knocking on the window of a 7-Eleven. And he's trying to find a path through his father to heaven.
That was a little taste of Mahmoud from Melbourne synth pop band Effie's Fighting Pillow. Hello, and welcome to episode 1 of Creation Stories. My name is Shelley Segal, and I am here to talk about creativity and belief and collaboration. And we're going to end this podcast with a song, which is very exciting. This is our first episode, and our very first guest is lead singer and songwriter of Melbourne synth pop band Effie's Fighting Pillow. Welcome to the podcast, Fabian Giacomelli.
Hello. Nice to be here. Like I have been for the last 2 weeks. It's been good.
That's right. So Fabian, or Fab, as we call him, is staying at my place. He's visiting from Melbourne. And we've been showing him the sights. We've been showing him LA. Do you like it here,
Yeah,
Fab?
it's sweet. There's that sort of thing where you're about to travel to this place and people say, you know, you go to LA, you're there a couple of days, and then you kind of want to get out of there. I was worried that was going to be true, and it's not. As soon as you get sort of like an insight into the place and where to go, I can imagine if you were just trying to do it on your own, it'd be kind of daunting. So yeah, it's been nice to have guides.
Yeah.
People show me their favorite things.
I feel like it took me a little while to get used to Los Angeles, which is where I'm based out of. But I do really love it here, and I'm glad we could show you around.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you.
So tell us a bit about yourself, Fab, where you're from, which we've sort of covered, and a little bit, and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm from Melbourne, and Shelley and I met, it's like 10 years ago now at music school, maybe even longer.
I think like 13 years
Yeah.
ago now.
Yeah, from Melbourne. Grew up out in the suburbs, and then I started doing music at music school when I was sort of trying to work shit out, and had a lot of fun, made a lot of music, took a lot of skills away from that into the rest of my life. Yeah, so I do that. I have a band. I've been in several. And now I'm also, I went back to uni for a while as well. And now I'm also an analytical chemist. So,
That's pretty cool.
yeah, do a bunch of different things.
For our American friends, uni is college.
Ah, that's right. Sorry. I went to college.
So you studied music. How did you get into music initially?
Well, like, a lot of people will tell you when they're growing up, I was into music since, day dot. And, there's generally like some sort of person who's an influence on you in that way. And I was trying to think about this. I started playing music when I was about 15, but that's pretty late. And I was trying to think of what the actual root of that all was. And I didn't really have a huge, an extensive like musical introduction from my parents or sort of any like cousins or friends or whatever. When I was younger, I kind of worked out, like, I think I started liking music when I was a kid playing video games, and I really liked the music in that. And then it took me a little while to realize that was what it was. That I kind of first started that love of the music. And then I think when I was about, year 7, which I suppose for you guys is the start of, just junior high school?
Yeah.
That's when I started like dabbling with some, instruments and stuff like that, and didn't really get into it because I sort of still didn't really have any role models or something maybe like that. And then as I got to, 15 when I started playing bass, I had a bunch of role models and friends, and yeah.
So you're saying you didn't have role models initially?
Initially, well, it's role models and peers, I suppose, and then when you start to work that out, you know, your friends are into these sorts of things, or you make friends that are into music, you sort of get into it. So yeah, I suppose it started with video games and then moved on to, I suppose it was like new metal when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So, well, that age. So listening to music now that you'd probably cringe to look back at.
And so you said you started playing different instruments. Was that at school?
Oh, yeah, at school. Like,
And what instruments did you play?
I muck around with the piano, which I'm still not particularly good at. And I had, what else was there? Drum kits and sort of guitars and stuff. And you sort of get a feel for it, but you don't really know what you're doing. And then, I suppose maybe I lost sight of what I should be doing because I didn't really have anyone teaching me. So I sort of, how do I put this? You know, I couldn't see the connection between just mucking around and actually making something, creating something, you know, creating art or something like that to begin with.
So do you mean you didn't feel like at that time when you were sort of experimenting in an unguided way, you didn't feel that you were making art or that you were being creative?
Yeah, I think I thought I was just pissing around. So,
But now you see...
all that pissing around actually is, yeah, that's the whole thing. But I suppose maybe I was a bit too literal as a kid or something like that. It's like, you're mucking around, so you're just mucking around.
Yeah, and if you have other people to create with.
Yeah.
So were you in bands from that time, from age 15?
Oh, sort of not really. Like, you know, you'd get together and you'd sort of jam and write a couple of songs with your friends from school, and then a couple of weeks later you'd maybe do it again, and then you'd sort of lose interest and whatever. So not until I was a bit older did I really start playing in bands.
And what did you play in those bands, and what sort of bands have you played in?
Oh, well, like the first one that was sort of a proper band that I ever played in sort of started off being like a Metallica cover band pretty much.
Yeah.
Which was kind of weird because I didn't ever really get into Metallica that much. So I was just sort of like, all right, sweet, learn these songs and play along and stuff. And I think it was more just for having friends that were into music that you could do something regularly with, as opposed to, yeah, really being passionate about that kind of music. And then, yeah, after that, played covers for a long time, for like a couple of years. That's not really a long time, I suppose. But yeah, did a bunch of that, and you sort of learnt to be a working musician because it was, you know, regular Friday, Saturday, go to work, play some tunes in some really divey bars. You know, a lot of musicians have been in those bars where it's kind of, I don't know, like if you ever go to Melbourne, you go to, well, I suppose it's gentrifying now, but like Frankston used to be this place. It's by the sea, and it's a bit of a, I don't really know the place around, say, California that would be analogous, but it was a shithole. And, well, maybe it's not a shithole. It was like terrible on Friday and Saturday nights. It was sort of the worst of drunken Australian culture sort of all coming out. So I suppose what I'm trying to say is you got an insight into just how tough it can be sometimes to watch that same sort of crowd come through and be awful to each other. You've got to pretend like everything's good and happy, playing the tunes.
Be the soundtrack.
Yeah, be the soundtrack to violence. Yeah. Which is just a weird way of putting it. It's not always that bad. I'm sorry, Frankston. It's really nice now.
It's a good name for an album. Soundtrack to Violence.
Yeah. By the sea. So yeah, that, and then after that playing in rock bands, like a few people that I met through being at uni with my friends like Kim and Nick and Rob, played in a band for a while there called Jester's Lane that sort of then morphed into a band called Humans as Animals, which is like a prog rock band with another friend of mine, Hugh. Sort of did that for a long time and played in a couple of like folk bands and stuff like that. Gypsy band, that was pretty fun. And then, yeah, now I sort of took a bit of a break, and now I'm doing synth pop with my band, Effie's Fighting Pillow.
Awesome. And yeah, I know you've toured with different bands. You've toured regionally.
Yeah,
You've toured around Australia. You've played bass, I think, predominantly and singing as well. And now with this new band, you've stepped forward and you're like the main songwriter and lead singer.
Yeah, I kind of always figured I'd like doing that, but then I didn't really maybe have the confidence to do it or something like that. Found it was easier to be in the back and sort of support, as opposed to having to be the, what do you call it, like the front person, sort of being the, you know, the direct connection between the what the song's about and the audience
Yeah,
sort
and
of thing.
the center of attention.
Yeah, the center of attention as well. It's pretty weird to think about now. But yeah, it's actually been a really it's been a real fun sort of transition into being at the front, because you kind of get to be, if you want, and I think that's what I've been doing, is like get to be somebody else for, 45 minutes or whatever it is when you're performing. And sometimes it's being somebody else, sometimes it's being, an exaggerated version of yourself. I'm not really sure what it is, but there's that weird feeling that you get and you're like, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's sort of, do you want me to tell you how it came about, or?
Yeah.
So I had a bit of an accident 2 years ago now, 18 months ago now. And so I was stuck at home from work for quite some time. And so, you're stuck at home, you can't really do very much. But I have conveniently have a studio in my house across the hallway from my bedroom. So I couldn't really get very far outside the house, but I definitely could get across the hall. So I was home pretty much for 6 months. So I spent a bit of time recording, and then I was listening to a lot of sort of 80s synth pop at the time, and happy songs, because I wasn't particularly feeling very happy at the time.
Yeah.
And then so I bought a synth and then started making these little jams, and I had this friend Hugh that I played in bands with for a while, and I sort of wanted to write some sort of jazz fusiony, synthy, weird shit for us to play. But then on the side of doing that, I was also writing a few little just pop songs about how I was feeling, about not feeling very good. And anyway, we had a friend of ours, a drummer, come around, this guy Mason Davis. Check out his band Creek. They're pretty sick. So he came around and I was showing him all these jazz fusion things. He's like, nah, man, not really that into this. It's pretty cool, but I don't really care that much. And who else is going to really care that much? I was like, yeah, that's a pretty good point. And then he sort of asked me what else that I'd been working on, if there was anything else that was there. And I was like, I've been writing these little pop songs. And he's like, all right, let's have a listen. And as soon as I showed him, he's like, yeah, that's what we're going to play. That's the band we're going to start. I suppose it's all his fault that I have to be the front person for a band now. That makes me sound like it's been forced upon me. But yeah, I played him the songs and he was like, all right, we're going to play these. And I said, all right, well, now that we've got, songs, a drummer, essentially I was thinking a bass player and a keys player, we need to get a singer. And I was like, what are we going to do? And he's like, you just got to do it, man. You wrote the songs, you got to step up and do it. So that's sort of how it came about.
That's cool. So you're doing so many layers to what you're doing with this band. You're crafting the songs, you're arranging the songs with the band.
With the band, definitely.
With the band, and performing the songs and singing.
Yeah.
Quite a lot of different areas
Definitely.
that you're working on. Do you feel that, how do you feel about all those different aspects of your creativity, and what does it mean to you to be able to do all those things?
Well, it's pretty nice to have, I suppose, a direct outlet to talking about, expressing something you might not ever be able to find the words to in a conversation, but you can sit down at a piano or a guitar or at the computer, make some beats or bust out some chords, and then sort of I don't know, there's some sort of catharsis or something like that about being able to put something that you're ruminating on or whatever, and then sort of ruminate on it on the piano or on the guitar and go around in circles and really find the best way to sort of say what you're thinking. And then that's sort of maybe for me, the thing that I've tried to work on the most is that emotional connection or, some sort of honesty. There's something about being stuck at home, being sick, that sort of was really weird to be put in a place where you've never really been that vulnerable in your life. Everything's been pretty easy, really, in grand scheme of things for me. So to be actually vulnerable, kind of meant that I had to be, honest about that vulnerability in my day-to-day life. And then it led to me being honest in my vulnerabilities or my thoughts and feelings about what I would talk about when I'm writing a song.
And has that expression of that vulnerability or that experience of vulnerability and the ability to express that flowed on into other areas of your life?
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of those things where you should consider how much direct, clear, honest communication really could benefit you in your life. We kind of all sort of want to put up a really sort of, you know, an impressive front. And it's kind of maybe sometimes get in the way of actually clearly communicating to people or something like that. It's good. It's definitely very good. And then, yeah, it's sort of, I suppose that informed, you sort of asked me before about that informed vulnerability or whatever is the songwriting part, right? I've noticed that there's a sort of a link between being able to be honest in the words that you're saying, and then there's some sort of, you know, honesty in the way, like I found it going through jazz school, right, with you, is that you're always trying to intellectualize stuff. And then it was kind of weird how maybe there's that connection between the honesty of being satisfied with, hey, it's a 1-4-5 chord progression, and that's pretty fucking cool. Like that's just that all it needs to be. And instead of, you know, searching for the most like difficult, intellectually complex, strange, out there, new sound thing, you're like, no, actually, you know, some of these tropes are pretty good, and you can be quite comfortable in and honest with yourself about the fact that you can use those things and like them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if the student in you is finding it hard
Yeah.
to sort of let go.
That's exactly it. You're wanting all these, you know, crazy subdivisions and notes and weird grooves and time signatures and chord substitutions and whatever else, you know.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it's nice to go, nah, I don't need that.
There's a reason why these work, and
Definitely.
these patterns have worked for so long and are able to connect emotionally.
Yeah.
With so many people.
Well, they definitely do. That's the thing that I suppose I'm, you know, you wrestle with that idea as a musician sometimes. Like, I can't remember, somebody was telling me about, like, you know, pop music's getting dumber, and they sort of compare the amount of chords that someone, like a Beatles track has got into it to a pop song does now. And it's like, that's kind of true, but also, you know, they were still working things out, and probably it's, you know, it's being whittled down. And I don't know, I think it's becoming more important about how maybe the words connect to you, something like that. Or both, I don't know.
The sounds or the atmosphere. There's so many elements other than just harmony, and perhaps there's a bit more room now for you to sort of put your emotions and ideas across, whereas before, you know, you were expressing it in a different
Yeah, definitely.
way.
Definitely. Before it was note pushing.
How do you think society, I don't know, particularly in Australia, I guess that's all we can really speak to, values creativity or your creative output?
Well,
or anyone's creative output.
I think generally, like, being in Melbourne and growing up there, and that's sort of like the creative hub of Australia, I guess. Like, every day you meet some musician that's from Queensland or from Sydney or from Perth or Adelaide, you know, in that sort of town. So for me, like, the community that surrounds me, I think supports it quite well. I remember reading an article recently about the fact that Melbourne has more music venues per capita than anywhere else in the world. So for music at least, I think it's appreciated. But I suppose it's still kind of appreciated in that weird way where I suppose every musician will talk to the fact that, you know, music's becoming sort of free now, right? And so I suppose, yeah, appreciated socially or like culturally, but then is it appreciated, being unappreciated financially? Is that the same? What does that show? I don't know. Like, there's kind of an interesting disconnect there or something, but yeah.
So you think like it's culturally
very
valued,
important,
but maybe not financially, or not in the same way other work is.
Well, it's kind of interesting. Like, I don't know that many people that work in sort of like graphic design, but the few that I do know, like, it seems that it's kind of going the same way, you know, like this sort of gig economy thing, right? Like, it's good because you can pick up work here and there, but then there's always someone willing to work for less. And so, I don't know, there's always that, you know, that line like, but it's great exposure. It's like, yeah, sure, but I'm hungry again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I suppose that's one of the reasons why, like, for example, I said before, I'm a musician, but I'm also a chemist now, because, yeah, I couldn't handle that sort of side of it. I found like the pressure to, you know, be financially successful overrun me for a little bit. But now it's good because it gives me the time and money to be able to put, you know, energy back into being a musician as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, appreciated. Definitely appreciated. Man, I'm so glad I had that coffee before we started talking. I'm like buzzing.
Oh, good.
Yeah, Effie's coffee has a pretty serious caffeine hit, I think. But yeah,
that's right. I haven't tried that one yet.
It's pretty good. It's kind of subtle. it's a shameless plug, like a shameless incidental plug for Effie's Coffee. Prologue Coffee Roasters from Melbourne. Female owned, female run. Get behind a strong woman today. I don't know.
I'm gonna take that little soundbite.
Yeah.
Send it to them.
Send it to Effie. Yeah. Nah, that's one of those things I find really funny. I keep telling her to push that sort of thing. Like it's, that sort of strong chicks are really, kind of fashionable, right? So like we were talking about it. I'm like, man, just push that angle because people maybe buy more of your coffee. It's like a weird thing to think about,
Yeah, well, I think, marketing is appealing to our values.
Yeah, so it's appealing to the fact that we're all thinking about sort of diverse voices or people.
Yeah. In a way, I don't know, it's kind of a bit gross to think of a company sort of tapping into...
Yeah, it is weird, isn't it? It's
that kind of stuff, but then also they're tapping into us anyway. At least maybe it's good that...
Good that it reflects our values,
Yeah,
right?
good that it reflects that, or that those issues, or that issue has become so much a part of our discourse and dialogue that, it's worth tapping into for them.
Well, that's a pretty funny, like, that's a really cool indicator of the fact that, like, it's working. Which is, yeah, I've never really, like, sort of summed it up like that, but as soon as you say that, it's like...
Maybe, but then also it could be leading to complacency. So, you think, okay, well, gender inequality is a real issue, but I buy coffee from this
chick,
female,
so I'm doing my part,
yeah,
right?
exactly. And so then maybe we feel like we're dealing with it as a society and while that's absolutely a positive thing to do, it's not necessarily...
Does it mean you're actually solving the underlying problem or something like
yeah.
that?
I feel that way with, like, eco-marketing, I feel like you go to
Yeah.
the store and there's all these cleaners and these products that say,
You're going to save the environment.
Yeah, save the environment. I think that's really positive, and I'm glad that companies feel that they need to appeal to that, and there's that pressure for them to do so. I think that's great, but then, hopefully not at
the actual expense of the environment.
Or us feeling that we've done enough now. We've got our green bags, and so
green bags, and like the funny one that as soon as you said the eco brand stuff, like I buy dishwashing detergent that's eco brand, and it comes in a fucking plastic bottle, and every time I'm done, I throw that plastic bottle in the bin, and like thinking about that, I'm like, geez, I'm a dick sometimes. Like I'm just like, yeah, best intentions, but yeah. Laziness will get you in the end, I suppose. Or what is it? Convenience, not even laziness, just convenience.
Yeah. What do you value, Fab? What
do I value?
Yeah. What are your values? I remember when I was in school, I was studying religion and society, and they talked about religions having core beliefs.
Yep.
So I think everybody has
their own
core beliefs, things that are really important to them, their core values. What's that for you?
Well, I went went through this like a little while ago with a friend. We were sort of talking about why we thought things, and tried to like really we tried to go pretty deep and like try and think about where my values come from. And like I think to begin with, there's sort of like a family thing, right? We can talk about it and sort of like break it down into smaller chunks. And so like my family's Italian and they're like Catholics. So kind of the tropes of, a good Catholic boy is, like you have respect for your family, for the seniors, and there's like a sort of a hierarchy in place of, of more valuable opinions. And that's like the church, right? They tell you you have respect for God, and then you have respect for people higher up the chain than you, and then you sort of come down. So there's like this thing of respect, and then the treat people how you want to be treated thing. So I went through these sort of ideas, and I was like, I kind of still agree with some of that. Like, but then I was sort of thinking about the hierarchy thing, and I was like, no, I can't really sit to that anymore. Like, it's a hierarchy with sort of no proof. So I reckon it's come to a stage, like for me anyway, some of my core beliefs are like, you should treat people how you want to be treated, or how, in a nice way, but it's because you want to, not because someone told you should, I suppose. Like, I think it's pretty important to do things for yourself and not really how am I trying to, how do I put this? It's like people tell you what's the right thing to do, and you've got to really stop and sort of evaluate what you should be doing and like maybe be considered, as opposed to just, you know, like we can talk about it in like a religious context. You know, you were told that's the right thing to do, and maybe it is the right thing to do, but do you actually believe it? Do you agree with it? Or is it, you know, some scary man in the sky who'll fucking smite you if you don't, you know, not steal from people or covet thy neighbor's wife or whatever it is, you know, that sort of weird stuff.
So obedience is not a value.
No.
Yeah.
No. What is it? Someone told me the other day there's that, what is that, oppositional defiance disorder thing? And I don't think I'm that in any sense. Like, I still know to fall in line, but yeah, what do they call it? Shit kid syndrome. Like, you know, that kid in the store that says, I want this, and dad or mum says no, and they just, you know, throw a tantrum. So yeah, there's a bit of that, I think. Shit kid syndrome in there. Yeah, so obedience is one of those things, like, I don't really follow, but then I'm starting to work out that that's kind of because, like, I need to have some sort of, like, sound understanding of why I think away, and then I think that's why I went to science, because it is all about evaluation. You just try and whittle as much as you can. You'll probably never, ever get to a truth. Like, the idea of a truth, I can get into that later, but yeah, you're whittling down what you think and cutting away all the bullshit to get to what is actually important, or what is actually important to you, more importantly. Something like that. I suppose it's, yeah, constant evaluation, slight disobedience, other core values. I don't know. Well, I got into science for, you know, the environment. Right now, I'm not kind of working in that industry, in that area, because it's like difficult. But yeah, I suppose trying to think about looking after this place and leaving it in a good spot for the people that kind of come after you is kind of a pretty serious value of mine. Being in like California and like traveling up and down the coast a little bit, and you see all these places, you know, these beautiful places that people have sort of established. I think there was a place in Malibu called Paradise that we were at the other day. And I was sort of looking at it, I'm like, this is pretty cool. And it's like, too bad we're going to stuff this up, because it's going to get swallowed by the ocean, because we're just going to, you know, keep doing what we're doing. So, I don't know. Yeah. A value of, yeah, looking towards the future. But I suppose that comes back into treating other people right, or treating people how you want to be treated.
That's lovely. It was nice when we went to Malibu, and we went to Santa Monica as well, and we saw a sea lion. Yeah,
the sea lion just put on a show for everybody. That was pretty cool. He sort of, I don't know what he was like. What was he getting from it? Is he just like a weird, is it performer? Performer seal?
We were watching him. He was watching us.
Yeah. Well, I was just trying to think about, you know, the motivation for the animal to do it. Maybe, I don't know, like that's sort of a funny assumption that I'll make, and then, you know, gladly be proved wrong, is that, you know, he's an animal, right? So he's not, do I think he's conscious or not? I'm not really sure. Well, he is, but, you know, self-aware, is he doing it because he likes the attention? I was sort of thinking to myself, like, you're never getting any food out of this. Like, why are you here? And it's like, you know, that's making a huge assumption that all a seal wants is food, or, you know, to survive in that way. So, yeah, that was interesting thought. Like, what do they call them? Shower thoughts or something like that.
Santa Monica Pier thoughts.
Yeah. Are seals conscious and vain and narcissistic? I don't know.
Are seals as obnoxious attention seekers as us?
Yeah, that's it. I suppose, yeah. You sort of try to think about animals and stuff and not anthropomorphizing them. But then, I don't know, maybe we can, maybe we should.
How do you think your values that we talked about influence your writing and your playing or performing, or just your creativity?
Well, I think, yeah, they're pretty strongly linked. Like, I've been writing songs about how I've been feeling, and it's sort of in relation to the world that I see around me. And I suppose, like, you know, I write songs about, well, either it's like questioning, you know, the status quo, which is that slight disobedience thing, or, you know, questioning how people will treat you or how you've treated other people as well. I think that's a pretty fun one to write songs about. Like, I don't think I've managed to successfully get a good one yet on that sort of topic, but that self-reflection, I think, is a pretty cool one, yeah, to get into.
So, a bit of disobedience
and
relationships.
Oh, definitely relationships. They're fun to, well, that's about, the treating people how you want to be treated or not treated thing.
Yeah.
I think if you definitely start to look at successful or unsuccessful relationships you've had in your life with friends or family or significant others, there's always something to unpack there.
Yeah, you see how close or far away you were to that goal of treating someone
Yeah, that's exactly it. And
that way. And also the other thing is that it's easy to say, oh, treat others the way you want to be treated, but everyone wants to be treated in their own way.
it's all slightly different. It's all slightly mismatched. And then if you're actually achieving it and if you think you're doing it, and then how much that is actually the truth of the situation as opposed to your rose-colored glasses, interpretation of the situation. It certainly is that.
And what about, more external things do you think influence the way you create or your creativity? Like,
Well,
the world or politics, culture, society, or what were you...
Well, politics is one of those ones that I find really interesting at the moment. Like the last song that I wrote that I was really proud of is it's a love song, but the whole premise of that song is sort of the idea that we're becoming a more and more everyday sort of polarized society in Australia. And I think that is a reflection of who we see on TV, which is America. So thanks for that. And I suppose how I'm not really comfortable with communication breaking down, because I think if you do that, then any sort of chance to actually repair any damage or anything like that's just going to disappear as we all, becoming more and more, violently argumentative. I use violent because it's funny, like when you start to see people that you kind of used to play music with, and like, I'll give you the, the typical, that's the stereotype. It's like the incense burning, sort of vegan, well-intentioned pacifist who has like a big share house and everyone comes around and hangs out and they feed everybody and, they look after everybody and they have this great, amount of compassion. And then to see those people, start wearing masks and, going to counter protests, which I can believe in because I think the counter protests are good. But then these people that you saw as lovely people become violent. And I suppose like I have a hard time dealing with that. But then I don't really know what it is to have to be oppressed and have to fight back like that as well. So yeah, I suppose that's that song that I was talking about, sort of, musings on how to find out, musings on how to communicate again or something like that.
Yeah.
I think hopefully that's a concise reflection on that. But yeah, that's just like, I suppose, left-right politics at the moment.
Well, you could definitely call that song the soundtrack to violence.
Yeah.
New album. I'm pretty keen on that name, obviously, you can tell. And my last question, Fab, is what does collaboration mean to you?
Well, when it comes to like specifically to songwriting, I think, it's pretty easy to second guess yourself or, not completely finish an idea. And because, there's your sort of ego gets in the way, right? And I find it really like humbling when you can have an idea and then when you get to create, like to collaborate with somebody, they accept your idea that you couldn't maybe sometimes. And then like that part of the collaboration is like, hey man, I think you did a good job of this and I want to work on it with my own creativity to make it even better because I think it's worthwhile. So for me, collaboration is like one of those things where, it's somebody like saying, hey, you're vulnerable, I'm vulnerable, we can all be vulnerable together and actually be, stronger as a sum of the parts that we sort of make up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that's lovely. Well, speaking of collaborations,
Yeah.
this is the part of the show where Fab and I are going to take a bit of a break from the mic and we're going to write a song together.
We're actually going to do the collaborating.
Yes, and then we're going to play it for you.
Yay.
But I just want to say, Fab, thank you so much for being on Creation Stories, episode number 1.
Yeah, woo. No worries. Thanks for having me.
It's my first interview. Where can people find your music? Where can people find Effie's Fighting Pillow?
So if you go to, at the moment, it's just up on Bandcamp, which is Effie's Fighting Pillow. So I probably should spell that. It's EFFIS and then fightingpillow.bandcamp.com. Yeah, and there's a couple of tracks up there. The latest one we released is one called Mahmood, which is my friend Hugh, who I play with, Hugh Christie. He wrote that song, and I think that one's like one of the... I'm very proud of it, and I'm very proud of him and how we collaborated together to make that all work. So yeah, there's that. There's always the Facebook and all the other social media stuff.
Instagram.
Instagram.
So you guys are making a video clip at the moment, aren't
Yeah, you're making a video clip at the moment. So YouTube as well will be soon a thing.
Yeah.
And then we're going to work on getting it all up on Spotify and all that sort of stuff too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Any listeners from Melbourne, you can check out Effie's fighting band. They play live around the northern suburbs pretty...
Yeah, kind of
often?
regularly. So once I get back home, I think I'll book a bunch of gigs. So, yeah.
So I'll put links to your guys' music in the text. And thanks, Fab.
No worries. Thank you.
So the song that Fab and I wrote today after we had a chat is called Possums. And it's about Fab's home back in Pascoe Vale in Melbourne, which is where I lived with him for 2 years before I moved to the United States. And it's just about being with your friends and enjoying a beautiful home. Here we go. This is Possums. Each morning, kettles on, cozy to keep it warm. All these trinkets to adorn your home. Smell of the evening's meal, incense and chamomile, wafts out through the garden door. Damp couches, cigarettes, small victories and regrets. Just need to get it off your chest. Just need to support your friend. Family of possums make their nest inside the walls. I never see them, but I know they call this home. I can understand why they would want to stay. It's nice to wake up here every day. Sound of bare feet on tiles. Newsreaders talk a while. Wallet keys and smile before you go. Quiet, ordered routine. Who's gone and who has been? It's a well-oiled machine, your home. Damp couches, cigarettes, small victories and regrets. Just need to get it off your chest. Just need to support your friends. Family of possums make their nest inside the walls. I never see them, but I know they call this home. I can understand why they would want to stay. It's nice to wake up here every day. It's nice to wake up here every day. It's nice to wake up here every day.